So till now we have seen about almost everything about the Docker and the volumes, the networks, and how to run the Docker CLI commands and all those stuff. We also did learn a little about Docker Compose, and we did install Docker Compose as well, where I remember I made a little goof up. I'll just correct it now. So what's all about the Docker Compose? We know Docker Compose is good for the production-based environment where we can run multiple container applications in just one go. You have to set up your volumes, your networks, your environment variables, your ports. Everything can be done using Docker Compose. You cannot be like always writing the CLI commands when it comes to say 100 containers. You cannot do that, right? So to do make our task easy, that's where Docker Compose comes into the picture. And I would like to tell you that Docker Compose is written in YAML file. So we write a YAML file. It is a set of instructions which is written in YAML file, and we run it using Docker Compose. So that's the big advantage of Docker Compose, where everything is just available to us in form of instructions in a file. So let's see, first of all, how to install Docker Compose. I'll be following this particular link to install the Docker Compose. Right. Uh, Let me check. I'll just copy this link. Go to Linux, and there you go. Just follow it. Boom. And give it some permissions, executable permissions, and also add it to my local bin. Right, it is already there because I did it. Okay, let me check the version, Docker Compose version. And now I have the latest version, which is your 1.2 29.2. Right, so where this particular version comes into the picture, uh, for every Docker latest Docker Compose file, we have certain version in this particular file, in the YAML file. So it comes really handy in these compose specification. Don't worry, I'll share this particular link. In this particular compose specification, we have all the parameters which we can use in the Docker Compose, and the Docker Compose understands that. So that's a part of the versions. Since I believe 1.27, if I'm correct, uh, let me check. Yeah, since 1.27, you don't have to really mention the version. So let's remove that out of our picture. So what is like how we write Docker Compose? The services in this Docker Compose means the containers. The number of containers we want to write, it comes under the services. The services over here means the containers. So we have been seeing this particular command. Let's say I want to run a Ubuntu based command, Ubuntu based container, right? We have already seen this. I'll just show you Ubuntu, right? And I want to run an hello world over it. So let me do hello world. So what's happening over here is, you might know this command by now, Docker. I'm telling Docker to run Ubuntu image, right? And run echo hello world over it. I haven't put any IT. I'll tell you why. So what would happen now? It would simply print hello world, and that particular container would now exit. So because I didn't attach a TTY to it, I was not interacting towards it. So can we try to write something similar to this in a Docker Compose file? You might think a single command only, so why we want to write a YAML file? Well, that's just for the beginning. We'll also see like how to run multiple containers. We can't always write CLI, right? Commands. So let's see. I'll just name it something fancy, v1.yaml, right? So as I said, we'll start with the services. Don't worry, you don't have to mug up these syntaxes and everything. Most of the things are already available over the net. Even I don't know all of them. So I just prefer to, you know, take these as a foundation and build my own compose over it. Next comes the name of the container. So I'll be using Ubuntu Node, right? And image. I'll be using Ubuntu. What command I want to run? Well, I want to run hello Ubuntu, right? And that's it. That's your Docker Compose file, our first version. Let's try to run it. Docker Compose. I want to specify the name -f for the file I'll be using. If you don't specify anything, it will by default take docker -compose.yaml. In this case, we do have a version 1, so we'll write -f YAML and followed by the parameter that is up. Up over here means to up the container. And let's see how it goes. And boom, it created a network for us, a default network, created a Docker container attaching to it, and showed us that, hey, hello Ubuntu from Ubuntu Node 1, right? So let me see if any container is active. No container is active. -a if container is done. Yes, this is our container. So, by default, what we used to do, we used to remove these containers when not in use. Well, similar thing can be done using Docker Compose as well. All you have to do is down, and it will automatically remove the network as well as the container. So that's the beauty of Docker Compose. Let's see in another example, a much sophisticated one. I've already prepared this one where I am telling to create an Ubuntu node, right? Over here, I'll be using two things. I am creating two containers, an Ubuntu container and an HTTPD node container. My server is running in this HTTPD node, and I am attaching these Ubuntu node using a network. So I've also created a network over here. So let me run you one by one. So I'm telling networks that this is the name of my network, net_Ubuntu. IPAM means IP address management. The driver I'll be using is default. There are plenty of other drivers as well. I won't go into the detail. If you want to know more about it, just Google it once. And if you want to know even what it does and all those things, you can always come back to me. It's not, I'm not telling because that increases the scope of the Docker. And I don't think you would be needing that much knowledge of Docker for this particular course. So I'm setting up the config, and the subnet is this particular subnet, right? So that's all about the network. Now coming to the Ubuntu node, I am using Ubuntu image, stdin open. If you remember, -it. So the I over here is stdin, standard input is open, tty is true, and I'm also setting an environment just for a demonstration. I am setting an environment variable. I'll show you how it works, where it would be useful. So network, I'm attaching it with netubuntu and giving it a static IP address from this particular subnet, right? So I have this now same thing, HTTPD node using HTTPD image and setting up the ports. So all the traffic going to port number 80 would be redirected to 8000, right? Sorry, all the traffic going to 8000 would be redirected to 80. Network again, netubuntu and IPv4 address, static address 6. So let's see how it works. Let me composes, and this time I won't give anything, hyphen f or anything, because the name is docker hyphen compose.yaml. So I can by default use it up. So yeah, creating a network first, creating HTTPD and Ubuntu. So since Ubuntu didn't have any foreground process running, that's why after doing a specific task, it would end. That's what we saw earlier, right? In our previous example of version 1. It printed echo hello world, and then it collapsed, it stopped. But this time I am attaching a standard input, so it won't collapse, it won't stop. And since HTTPD has a foreground process, it won't stop, it will keep on running, and these are the logs. So let's see, let me attach myself container execute -it, and the name of the container is Ubuntu node, right? And running bash. Okay, so here I am. So let me do a curl over it. Would be fancy, right? Let me do a curl to add. Okay, I have to install curl. This might take a little time. Almost done. Since I'm forwarding it on, so I can also do this, I believe. 8080. Okay, 8000. It works. So because I was forwarding it to port number 8000, right? So that's why. Let me do a curl now. By default, port number is 80. It works. So yeah, they are both on the same network, and even our port, this too works, because that's why I'm able to ping it to the host machine from the host machine, right? And we also set something called myvar. Let's see, echo dollar myvar and hello. See, it works. So we were successfully able to, set a environment variable. So that's about Docker. I just want to show you this because, see, we were able to, we can do the same thing over CLI as well. But those are like really hard steps we have to go through, like something called, first we have to do Docker network create, name of the Docker, let's say Ubuntu, right? Then what we have to do is Docker run -it -name Ubuntu node -network net Ubuntu. And then we also have to give the static IP address, which I don't know how to do. I have to check that. And environment variable, if we have to set myvar equals to hello, right? So it's a tedious task, right? And this one is much more readable, I believe, the Docker Compose file. And I just scratch the surface. There's plenty of commands we also have to write to make the entire thing happen. And if you are still not impressed, I'll show you another example. I've made this particular version, this particular compose file, where I am made a React-based client, Spring-based server, and even the MySQL, right? So let me show you before I run it. I'll just close this, Control C to stop all the containers, Docker Compose down, removed it, right? Now let me run Docker compose -f docker compose v2 YAML and up. Okay, invalid restart policy always. Okay, let me make it on failure then. Right. So in total over here, we are setting up 3 services, means 3 containers: client node, server node, and DB node. Right. So let's see. It should be running in just a second. The MySQL takes a little time, but okay, it is ready for connection. Let me see all the containers are running or not. Yeah, I have all 3 containers running at my side. Okay, let me do a localhost now, 3000, and there you can see it just produces some random codes, right? And new code, we'll see a new code. I'll bookmark it. This would be bookmarked into a proper database, which is not okay. I might have to just pardon this issue because it's not, it's quite buggy. So let me do one thing. I'll stop this container. Before that, I would like to show you something. I missed it in the previous session. There's something called Docker container logs, where you can actually check the logs of that particular container. Right? So I'll just copy this particular container ID of the MySQL and let me do it over here. And here you can see all the logs as well. So that's the beauty. You can use logs to check the real logs as well. Right? So I'll just restart this container. Sometimes what happens is the server is up while MySQL database is still setting up. So the server won't find the MySQL running by the time it is up. So that's why it tries to produce such an error. I'll just stop it. I know my thing won't be sounding right to you, but it is what it is. I'll explain you some other time. If you still have a doubt, you can always come back to me. It is starting now. And let's hope it works this time. Otherwise, we'll just go ahead. Okay, let me bookmark it. And yeah, I was able to insert this time. New code. I love John Lennon. I'll just John F. Kennedy, but it's okay. Okay, now you can see. We can see like all these codes we bookmarked. So what's happening now? Interesting, right? So what we were doing, these are the images I created back in 2020 for one of the sessions I did for OSI India. So what's happening over here is I am using port 3000 to 3000. The source port is this, the target port is this. Attaching it to the network Ubuntu, created a server node with this particular image. All these images are available. You can always use them, right? Deploy policy, I made a policy this time that if my server node fails, please restart it after a delay of 10 seconds, and the maximum attempt is 5, where window between each attempt is 120 seconds. And the source port is 8085 and the target port is 8085. And this is depends on. So what happens, the server node should not start before the DB node, right? The DB should be available before server node starts. So that's why I made it depends on. Set it up some environment variables because that's the need of the source code. Attach the network along with the static IP address. Created a DB node where I am using a MySQL image, added ports, right? Volume, attach the volume that I'll be using this particular DB node for my value MySQL because we saw our volume, right? We used to do -v in the Docker run file, but it is super easy in Docker Compose. Added some environment variables because these are the need of MySQL. You would be asking like, Shubham, how would we know that these are the environment variables? So I'll just show you. If I type MySQL over here, go to the official image, it tells me over here that these are the environment variables where MySQL underscore root underscore password is mandatory. Other things you can give like MySQL database I gave, user, password, all these things I have already mentioned in these and added that to the networks. For some of you, this might not work, this Docker Compose, because you might be having 3306 port number busy, might have installed MySQL over your systems. So a heads up, you have to stop that particular service first, then added a network. So we did all these with just a particular Docker Compose, all these stuff. We ran three containers all together. And this is the end result, right? Okay, so that's all about the Docker Compose. These are some of the examples, and I'll share these, compose files with you for you to try. And furthermore, you can always look over the Docker Compose official website to learn more about it. And there are plenty of examples for Django, Rails, WordPress. All these things are always there. You can also try. Hmm, and do give it a read, this particular Docker Compose specification, because it will tell you in detail what each compose particular reference does. What does this uh, all these mean? So you can read about it, right? So coming to the grand finale about running Hadoop over the Docker, because that's the need of this particular course. So I have taken some Docker Compose file from this guy, Mohammed Semdani, and I'll be using this particular, his GitHub. This GitHub I'll be using to create the Compose file. This guy has already created a Compose file for us, so we'll be using this particular Compose file. But the issue with this Compose file, I found that the Zeppelin was not running. So for that, I dig deep like why it was not running. So then it showed me like the OpenJDK was required. Yeah, over here. So it told me like OpenJDK was required. So for that, I went to this particular the GitHub of it, and there I made changes in the Docker file and already made changes in this particular install. So the latest one, the fixed one, I did plenty of things like why it was not running because I wanted it to run. So I forked this particular one and the latest code is now present. I've just fixed it just a couple of hours back and added OpenJDK. Also, there was an argument that was failing over here. So I added a new argument as well. So yeah, it's now fixed and running, and Also, the latest one is available over my GitHub as well. I'll just show you guys. Created my own Docker file. Here you go. So this one is fixed now, and let's try it. Let me give you a heads up. This one is like really hefty on your machine. So make sure you don't have anything running on your machine. And it would be great if you have a 16 gigs of RAM over, spare with your machine. So I'll just shut it down first. Down. Okay. Right. So all these are gone now. I'll also close all these things. I'll also share this particular creating a big data development platform using Docker Compose. I'll share it with you guys. So let's see what's going on over here. I have this ready with me. Yeah. So what's happening? We are creating plenty of containers over here. We have a name node where we are using Hadoop. We have set the volume and environment file as well you can set. So I have an environment file over here, Hadoop Hive, ports, and attached to a static IP. Then we have data node, again using Hadoop data node for that, and attached the volume, environment, added environment variable, and also depends on. Then Hive server, made a PostgreSQL meta store, added environment, added ports, depends on. I know you know these things would be comfortable by now. What does the syntax all in all means? And after doing that, made couple of changes over here in the Zeppelin, right? And I'll show you. Yeah, over here also in the MySQL. So you have to remove one of the things this guy had made wrong in the MySQL. I'll just show you. He also added the MySQL root user. You don't have to do that because that's not the right syntax. So you have to remove that. And that's it. Let me run this particular compose now. BD infra, Docker compose, and up. Yeah. So this will create the database and everything. So yeah, this guy properly explains like what is going on over here and everything, because everyone is using this only, this particular Git repo only, but no one cared to fix it, and I fixed it now. Maybe things got a little tricky after this particular date, so now things are fixed, I meant to say. And one more thing I would like to add, this particular link is also not working. I tried this link, it's not working. So let me show you how you can fix this as well, because yeah, so it should be -vp content and this would work. So make sure you also fix this, and you can do all your Hadoop and everything over here with this particular fix. So let me show you now. I'm pretty sure Hadoop is running now. Yeah, almost. Okay, I told you like this is pretty heavy. So make sure you don't have anything else running over your machine. Okay, Docker container ls-a ls-a. Yeah, all these things are running. I'll add a watch to it. Yeah, all the containers are running perfectly fine. Let me try with the name node now. And here you go. You can see Hadoop is perfectly running fine. Let me try with Hive. Okay, Hive is a meta store, so we can't have a UI for that. But for the Hue, it should also be working. The default password, username password is admin. Right? So Hue is working fine as well. Apache Spark. Here you go. Apache Spark is fine as well. You guys have to contact me because I haven't worked in anything, in this particular big data field. So I was able to fix the Zeppelin UI. I'll just show you. But the trick over here is still like, let me copy the user ID of Zeppelin. It is Docker container logs. So I am still getting this particular error, which I am not able to figure out like how to resolve it. So if you guys know how to do it, please contact me so that we can fix this one, right? Because this particular UI is not working. So it's not working UI, but the container is running perfectly fine. Let's try with the stream, and stream sets also work. Default username password is admin, right? Stream sets works too, and yeah. So that's all about setting up Hadoop in Docker container. So feel free to go through these two blogs. I'd already shared them over the references, and along with that, I've also shared my contact details. You can feel free to contact me. Also added my Git repositories for all these containers and everything. And I haven't shared these compose files, but I'll do it. You can contact your professor. I'll share it with him. So yeah, that's all regarding the session. I'll tell you one thing. I've just scratched the surface for the Dockers. So, it is pretty huge. Let me tell you clearly. If you like ask me, uh, are you a champion in Docker? Of course not. You just know a basic about Docker. I can assure you, no one in the interview would ask you more than this. I can assure you about that. But if you want to learn more about Docker, please dig deeper into it. All you have to do is go to the Docker docs, and that's where you can learn it all. If you want to learn, if you want some Udemy video or something, I also have a Docker Udemy, you know, video session. You can also contact me and I'll share with you. But I just scratched the surface with Docker. It's pretty huge to complete, in a month or two. It might take more than 5 6 months to, you know, take learn about Docker. I've been doing Docker for past 2 years, and still, something in new things keep coming to me. So please make sure you keep practicing Docker, and if you have any issue, any doubt, feel free to contact me. And that's it from my side. I am Shubham Agarwal signing off. Thank you all, guys.